So one thing that seems to have persuaded quite a lot of schools to become academies is money. Now, I think the reality is that the amount of money that you get is relatively limited, and it certainly tends to be a one-off rather than a recurring payment. So did money play any part at all in your decision?
It played a part, certainly, and I think it is important to remember that we are in a climate of great change and uncertainty as far as financial income is concerned. And so with all the announcements and changes, reducing budgets for post-16 provision, which has been quite substantial, 30% over 3 years, that was an aspect we had to take into consideration. So you can't convert for money because, as you quite rightly pointed out, there was a bigger pot available at the outset, but there is no guarantee going forward that that will remain so. And also for schools that converted more recently, ourselves included, you didn't get the double funding that was available at the outset. So you do have to think about money, because as part of becoming an independent school, if that's the route you pursue, you do then have to procure the services that were formerly provided by your local authority. You have to take on pension provision, the employer contributions. You have to think about maternity payments and cover. So there are a number of financial considerations that you take on board in terms of responsibilities as an employer that do mean you have to pay attention to the financial aspect. Also, the fact that as an academy, you are as members and directors, according to the Charity Commission, you are responsible for maintaining and ensuring long-term financial viability. So if your figures don't add up, it has to be a consideration, but it is one part. And for our team of governors, it was very much about finding the mechanism which best enabled us to deliver the higher standards and the outcomes for our students. And if you are generating operating efficiencies through collaboration, perhaps as one mechanism, then certainly utilising the extra money that you get through what's called the LACSEG money, so it's the extra bit of difference that would normally be retained by the local authority under maintained arrangements that go directly to the academy. You can use that pot of money to procure the services that you feel best meet your particular school's needs, which is important, and enables you to think about the longer term planning in terms of the financial outlay that you have and the income that you can expect to get. So it is a consideration, but it is not the driving consideration in this case.
Another thing that I was going to ask you about is that the promised freedoms of academy status, again, were reputedly the things that drove people to become academies. And yet, again, the research suggests that very few of those academies have done anything to vary terms and conditions of service for staff. They've done almost nothing in terms of changing the curriculum, changing length of school day, etc. Yes. Almost none of that has happened.
Yeah.
Now, if those are the major selling points for academy status and nobody's actually accessing them, what's the point?
I think that one comes down to perspective.
Right.
Because from a Department for Education perspective, offering that flexibility sounds attractive. But I think from an operational and practical perspective, if you're thinking about selling change as a positive proposal to key stakeholders, which, don't forget, apart from students and parents, are your staff, then there are huge reservations about academy status. Some have an ideological opposition, which is everybody's entitled to their own view. To move away from terms and conditions that staff are used to immediately, if at all, is something you'd have to think very long and hard about, because if you want your staff as your major resource to deliver those improved outcomes for students, you need them on board. And if you're going to alienate them at the outset by saying immediately, we're going to change terms and conditions, I don't think is a positive selling factor. I think it is fair to say, and we certainly gave the commitment that we wouldn't be changing terms and conditions, but we would be looking to be more flexible in terms of recognising high performance. That is certainly something you can move towards. I think in terms of curriculum, we've certainly seen a difference. However, again, I would have to be honest and say that there are lots of freedoms in terms of curriculum provision that are still available through maintained arrangements. So again, it cannot be the only deciding factor. I guess with any major decision, when you're talking about making a change, it has to be a range of different things, but it is about how they as a whole meet and enable those higher education standards to be delivered. So operating efficiencies, having the flexibility of the curriculum to drive it forward in a way which best meets your own students' needs depending on where they are, making sure that the most vulnerable groups get the extra provision and resourcing that they need to succeed. All of those things make a difference. In terms of the day, the length of the day, I understand that some academies have chosen to do that. We haven't, but we have a slightly different arrangement, I would say anyway, in that we operate from 8:30 through to sort of 2:30. It depends. It does vary per year group, the finishing time, but nonetheless, we have what we call a session 16 day, which approximately, not every 16 days, we do stop the timetable to enable some of the extracurricular and more focused activities to take place. So if there was a trip perhaps needed to be organised because that provided extra stimulation and extra resourcing that would enable students to see, have enriched opportunities, I guess, then you could do that by stopping the normal timetable. You're not then always hitting, some of your key subjects by taking a trip out, on other days during the normal timetable. But again, if you're thinking about asking staff to start earlier, finish later, maybe conduct summer school activities, to work weekends, that has to be something that is done in consultation with staff, that staff are willing to sign up to, because again, it will not work unless you are going on this journey in a cohesive way, so in a way that signs up to a new way of working, that everybody has got ownership of the vision, so they understand why these changes are needed, are involved in the decisions that are being made in order to achieve the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. So that's why I would say from a practical viewpoint, it's not something that you could do with full ownership by all key stakeholder parties. So it will come, I believe, over time rather than instantly.
Sure.